Iowa in second, Sioux Falls in third, and Green Bay at 6-5 in fourth, and Tucson right behind them at 6-6. So it should be interesting. I do look for some of these teams. Nebraska will have a chance, and Quad City Steamwheelers will have a chance to play spoiler down the stretch.
Oh yeah, it's always fun to play spoiler. I mean, one of my favorite memories as a football fan, I'm a Steelers fan for those who are not aware. One of my favorite memories was 2006. It was Bill Cowher's last game, and we were out of the playoff running. But to stick it to the Cincinnati Bengals, that felt really good.
You talk about Green Bay, and they were idle this weekend, but they're going to take on Bismarck on the road next week, and that's definitely not a gimme. Arizona travels to Cedar Rapids to play the struggling River Kings, and the San Diego Strikeforce, they'll travel to Sioux Falls and play the Storm. So really, you would probably, most of your IFL fans out there would take the Rattlers and Sioux Falls in their game, and then this Green Bay game against the Bucks probably is going to be the IFL game of the week. That game is going to be very important in deciding standings going down the stretch in these last few weeks.
Absolutely. Out of all the games this upcoming week, it is of the utmost importance out of any of them. Not to say the other games don't matter for determining the top seeds, but this game is going to help determine who makes it to the playoffs and who doesn't make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, so it should be interesting. It's nice to have one of those teams that we've talked about, one of those essentially expansion teams, so to speak. It's nice to see one of them sneak into the top, sneak into the front of the standings in this league, and give themselves a chance to compete for a playoff spot.
Definitely. I mean, when a young team does well, it's always exciting because whether it happens or not, you start thinking, is the changing of the guard going to be coming in the near future? And this doesn't matter what sport you're watching. I don't care if you're watching football, baseball, basketball. When the new kids on the block start making a name for themselves, you got to take notice.
Yeah, definitely. And you're seeing a lot of movement and the transaction wire in the IFL. And I see that on the 22nd, the Bismarck Bucks, they released veteran wide receiver Mike Tatum, and he was picked up later on in the week by the Nebraska Danger, wanted to, obviously trying to get a little bump in their offensive production. And I just wonder if it's a little, a little too late for the Danger. They'll basically need to win out to put themselves in the tournament.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't found any huge name receivers in Nebraska, and as much as Tari Armstrong Jr. is a very good quarterback, he's probably like the second-tier IFL quarterback type, So, like, my top quarterbacks, in the IFL currently are Lorenzo Brown and Neal,
Yeah, well, you can never go wrong with veterans, man.
Yeah, And then I have kind of Medlock, Tommy Armstrong Jr. as that tier 2. I mean, they're, even EJ Hilliard maybe tier 3, bordering on tier 2, whereas they're pretty darn reliable, but they don't make the very, very explosive plays that you are in the very clutch plays that you're expecting from the tier 1 guys. And that's my big difference between tier 1 and tier 2, not just in the IFL, but really any league.
Yeah, definitely. Hilliard, he's just been a byproduct of a team that just seemed to get off to a slow start, played a little bit up and down. I really believe in him, and like you mentioned earlier, they have questionably, the top receiver in the IFL in Pedroza. So I was really hoping that they could put together a better season, and maybe they can win out down the stretch as well and put themselves in the mix too. The problem is in the IFL, there's really not many opportunities at the top when you have the Rattlers, Iowa, and the Storm. So there's not, those guys have playoff positions locked up. Everybody else is fighting for one.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I am glad to see the IFL expand because as much as I do enjoy seeing established teams make it, you can only see established teams make it for so long before you're saying, oh boy, the Sioux Falls Storm and the Iowa Barnstormers again. And nothing against those teams, but if you're watching the NFL, you're like, oh boy, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are in the playoffs for the 100,000th time. I wonder who's going to win the AFC East this year. It kind of loses that sense of monotone, lack of fun. When more teams are added or teams jump ship, it gives you a little bit of a spark, and you're like, all right, things are fresh. Let's see who's coming up, who's going to step up.
It's kind of like what's going on in the NBA right now with first season in almost a decade without LeBron in the playoffs. We're getting to see a lot of other teams, and we're getting to see a lot of other players that are getting the opportunity to showcase their skills. So, yeah, you make a good point. It's kind of weird how that works in sports, but that definitely is how it works in indoor and arena football, particularly because there's not much stability on the rosters from a year-to-year basis.
There's really not. I mean, if there is stability, it means you are a core player on that team. And that means you're usually with a certain group of people. We talked about this last episode, how some players move with coaches. I'm going to cite again the Carolina Cobras. Coach Billy Back has taken Charles McCollum from Cincinnati to Wichita Falls to, I believe he was with the Venom at one point in Nashville to, now to Carolina. And they brought Laughing House and Jolly along for the ride, and Laughing House just left for the AFL this past year. So, there's a lot of, if like I said last week, I'm not going to go too far into this, but if a player-coach combination is there, they're going to travel together.
No doubt about it, and that's the key with some of these really good teams that you're seeing. Good players follow good coaches, and good coaches know that, again, the player's not going to play forever, so you got to take advantage of that player's lifeline and skill set while he's playing at a high level. In case you're just joining in, I'm the coach. That's the kid. You're listening to the Indoor Football Experience on the Alternative Football Network, and we appreciate you joining in with us today on this holiday weekend. We hope everybody's having a happy and safe Memorial Day. So, again, you're listening to the Coach and the Kid, and we're talking a little bit about the IFL. We're going to transition now to the National Arena League and talk a little bit about what's going on in the National Arena League, because it seems like, to me, and this is basically more your area because you're a big fan of this league and have teams in your area to follow, but it seems like for a league that doesn't have many teams, they have a lot of news.
Yeah, I mean, the big story this week, and really the big story of the industry this week, is former Kansas City Chief, former Montreal Alouette, former Tennessee Titan, former San Diego Charger, Dexter McCluster, the former Pro Bowler, made his National Arena League debut earlier today. And you can see why he was a Pro Bowler. He is so explosive. He's adapting really well. I had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. McCluster after the game, and you will find that interview on the Arena Football Talk Facebook page later on. It'll be posted right after the show. But the game was great. It didn't get the attendance I had hoped for, but I knew it was Memorial Day. I knew the New York Streets Massachusetts Pirates game was a rescheduling, so I knew the attendance wasn't going to be as great as I had hoped, and also the Westchester County Center is a very small venue. So, overall, those play factors, but the game itself was great to watch from a fan's perspective because, I was able to stand at the end zone barriers. I was hearing players, saying some things to each other, like chirping. Nothing bad, nothing really chippy, but just kind of friendly, as far as friendly banter goes during sporting events. During the game, you're everyone's enemy, but after the game's over, hey, how you doing, man? How's your family?
Right.
It's a nice environment. Everybody in the stands was really respectful, which is always great to see. We almost ran out of footballs at one point, though, which I found hilarious because, you know, the players were giving them out to the kids and stuff, which is great. But I think someone lost track of how many we had, and we almost had to ask someone from the stands to throw one in.
Yeah, the thing is, we talked about when you get a player like a Dexter McCluster, just going back to that for a second, how um, I used to talk about how when you'd walk the field as an official or even a front office person before a game and somebody would stick out. So when you were at that game and you saw McCluster for the first time on the field, tell our listeners, what did you see? Did you feel like the guy was different, or what stood out to you?
I mean, he was kind of standing in his own area of field, and seemed hyper focused, And I mean, after you come from the NFL and CFL, that's kind of work ethic you expect. I mean, everyone was hyping up his entry to the National Arena League with good reason, but he clearly didn't let it get to his head. He didn't get all boastful. He was very humble in his prior interviews. In an interview I gave with him, the very interesting thing that I didn't know, I asked him how the Pirates reached him, and we reached him via Instagram, which is great. I mean, the power of social media. And,
Hey, you want to come play some football?
Exactly, because, he's got 4 kids now. His eldest is going to be starting high school soon. And he wants to be close to home so he can see her, go through school, which I think is really great because, as much as you enjoy the game, he's made his money, and family comes first. I mean, and I really respect that about Dexter, and, again, he was focused on his craft and didn't let the fact that he was formerly in the NFL dictate how he presented himself as a human being, and I really respect that.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, because the more guys that can extend their career playing at this level in viable leagues, the better. So, these leagues need this kind of news, all of them. They need this kind of news, and it's good. And it's also good to hear that the guy got there and he was a good, humble football player who showed up.
Yeah, and, I think, and then we talk about older players playing. E.J. Nemeth, the Streets quarterback, he is one of the older quarterbacks in indoor football in general. I mean, he's been playing for a good while. He played in the Professional Indoor Football League, the more recent version, not the 1998 version. He's not quite that old. For Trenton Freedom, and there's a throwback team for you. But the fact that he's been playing for so long, I mean, we're talking about his first team he played for was the Reading Express back in 2007. And this is his first year playing since he played with the York Capitals in 2015. I mean, he's a 3-time AIF champion, AIFA Player of the Year, 3 times over, AIF MVP, first team All AIF, second team All PIFL. I mean, this guy has a lot of accolades to his name. And I think it was great that New York signed him. And one of my favorite things about E.J. Namath is nothing he controls. It's the name, because you're in the New York market, your name sounds like Namath. I mean, that's a pretty natural fit. If they have brought him in for that reason alone, I couldn't be mad. But he's a starting quarterback. He's done a great job so far. And, it just shows that despite being 36 years old, which in football years is pretty old, for non-kickers at least, he can still play at a high level, and I love seeing that.
Yeah, again, as long as these guys can get in as long as these leagues can be professionally run and they can show a level of stability, you'll find more players like this that want to extend their career and play at this level. The one thing that's getting interesting about the National Arena League, with them starting a little later, nearly a month later than a lot of the other leagues out there that we talk about, things are really just starting to heat up, so to speak. So, I look at this Orlando. Let's just talk a little bit about the games from this week. This one was kind of intriguing to me. The Orlando Predators and the Carolina Cobras, which you touched on a little bit. That's a high-scoring game that the Cobras dropped. 72-69, but that's a lot of points put up, and that's good entertainment for the fans.
Absolutely, and I gotta say, if you're on the National Arena League Facebook forums, some people are being pretty critical of Kenny McIntyre, who revived the team. But I gotta give him a major shout out because Mr. McIntyre has not shied away from the press, saying how saying you're supposed to trust the process. He's being he's trying to motivate his guys, saying things are gonna get better, but you gotta work with me, and he's not hiding from the press. He's saying what he feels like, and he's being respectful. And I gotta say, a lot of owners would kind of just have someone do the PR for them. He's doing the PR for the team, and he said something along the lines of, listen, if we got a clear house to make things go better, that's what we're gonna do. And clearly, the players and coaches heard that because they upset the defending champion Carolina Cobras. Which, by the way, at Arena Football Talk, we do the weekly pick'em, and nobody got that right. So congratulations on proving every single one of us experts wrong.
Yeah, and that's the kind of league this really is. A light schedule in the National Arena League this past week, probably due to the holiday, and I get that. In case you're just joining us, you're listening to the Indoor Football Experience. I'm the coach, and I'm joined by the kid, and we're talking National Arena League football. We're kind of take you around the horn in the NAL right now because, again, like I said, a light week, RJ, but a bunch of big games coming up next week as you have the Carolina Cobras. They're going to play the Columbus Lions in the Columbus Civic Center, and that ought to be a really good game.
Definitely. I mean, in general, these games are good. There's not a bad team in the league this year. Which it's the first year that's really the case because in the league's inaugural season, the Dayton Wolfpack and Corpus Christi Rage both lost all their games. So there were weak teams then. Last year, the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks, after having a great first season in the NAL, had an abysmal season last year. Partially due to some internal things, really not controlled by the players and coaches. People going to different places. But this is the first year with this league where I feel every single team has a very good shot taking it all. And with 6 teams, it makes it so that talent pool is deep in every team. Something that I'm starting to see happen, separate the best teams from the second best teams and third best teams.
Uh-huh.
The best teams have 2 great receivers, because what happened in Westchester today is the Streets couldn't. Their main target, Edgar Allan Poe, who, by the by, has one of the best names in indoor football right now, was shut down by the Massachusetts defense. And when you have only one big receiver and he gets shut down, it's hard for the offense to operate because you can't use the run game to free yourself up as much because you're on a 50-yard field. And it's a narrow field. It's not 50 yards, but it's completely wide. It's it's a more narrow field. It's hard. So I think that's why I think the Carolina Cobras are such a powerful team. And they made an interesting trade with the Massachusetts Pirates recently, where they got Levon Pearson for some prospects. So this tells me that the Cobras are playing the short-term game and the Pirates are playing the long-term game. Because the Cobras have more established people who are aging a bit more. But clearly Massachusetts is not going to go that route. They want to make sure they have long-term, viability, and I think that's great, And there's no approach that's inherently right or wrong because the Cobras are defending champions. But I do think it's important just, see what your plans are because you don't want to have a window that's like kind of big but not super small. It's like, you have to know what your window is, not leave it up to interpretation. Because if I say, this is your window, but the coach thinks it's something else, you could have a coach looking for prospects when you guys are aging quickly.
Yeah, and that's just a byproduct of the movement on the rosters from year to year. Most teams don't plan for the future; it's go for it now. Although we have talked a little bit about how teams in the last few years, or at least this year, it seems like I've mentioned a couple times, it seems like there's less movement, less in-season movement, and what by that I mean, traditionally after losses and whatnot, you would see teams make a lot of moves, release players, bring players in. But now I think that teams realize that that's not cost effective. You need to front load, and you need to make sure that that you come out of training camp with a real set roster. And real quick, RJ, I know that you have a Facebook Live up. I have one up too for everybody that's listening. You're listening to the Alternative Football Network. This is the Indoor Football Experience. So for all those people checking in right now, appreciate you listening on this holiday weekend. And really what I was saying, just those rosters, it seems like it's easier to try and build some continuity with a better roster coming out of training camp than flipping players after losses and every week. That can get expensive.
Absolutely. And I do want to just send our thoughts out to Joe Harris of the Carolina Cobras. He suffered a dislocated ankle this past week. They put it back in place at the arena. He went through x-rays and CT scans. Luckily, nothing is broken, but there might be a fractured ligament. But that's about it. He'll need some surgery. The doctor said he'll be good in 5 to 6 months. So we at the Alternative Football News Network wish you a quick and speedy recovery, Joe. And thank you to the Cobras for keeping us informed about how he's doing.
Definitely. I want to wish Joe all the best and a speedy recovery. Had a chance to communicate with him late last night. Seems to be in good spirits, and you basically covered it all. Had a clean dislocation with some ligament damage. He'll have surgery later on this week, and he'll be back on the field hopefully in 5 to 6 months. So the old saying. And the worst part about sports, whether you're in the front office, you're a coach, you're an official, you're on the field, what have you. The worst part about sports is an injury, but this from being around sports. A lot of times they always say a dislocation is better than a fracture, and in this instance, it seems to be that way. So speedy recovery to him, and hopefully he'll be back in camp healthy and ready to go next year.
Definitely, and these injuries are a reminder that as much as we look up to these players, they are human just like you and I, and we all have a certain pain tolerance, and it's just important to remember that as much as they're the warriors on the field that we look up to, they're all human, and we want to show them our compassion and our well wishes.
No doubt about it. Hey, what's up, Alex? I appreciate you listening to the Indoor Football Experience. Got some veteran football players checking in on my feed, so I appreciate that. That's the kind of guys we need listening in. So you're listening to the coach and you're listening to the kid. We're talking indoor football on this holiday. Monday, Memorial Day. I want to wish everybody a happy and safe Memorial Day. The game I really wanted to talk about, and if you're just joining us, we're talking about the National Arena League. We've recapped the games for the week and kind of moving forward a little bit. The game I want to talk about that's going to kick off National Arena League action next week is going to be the Battle for Florida when the Jacksonville Sharks travel to the Orlando Predators and play in the Amway Center.
Oh boy, now there's a game this is like a rivalry the NAL needed, because as much as there are teams that don't like each other, there wasn't a real proper rivalry until the Predators were recently resurrected by Kenny McIntyre. And man, it's great to see them go at it again. If you go to any of the forums that are the fan pages, there is back in the AFL, they were open about them disliking each other, and they still are. They have not shut up about it, and I love it, because it's rivalry is one of the best things in sports. It's fun for fans to see, when your team wins a rivalry game, it's that more exciting. And when your team loses a rivalry game, it's that much more painful, and revenge is that much more sweet later on.
And that's the key to these leagues, and that's the one reason I've been following this league a little bit closer. I like that the teams are relatively in close proximity, and you can have those rivalries built that you're talking about, and that leads to our next game next week, Saturday.
Yeah, coach. So we're talking about Kenny McIntyre and stuff right now. Literally, I'm on Facebook, and Kenny says, Jacksonville Sharks, you're up to bat, or should I say, you're next. Hashtag Go Preds. This is what I mean by it's a great rivalry.
What's up, Kenny? Thanks for listening to the show. Like I said, we've been getting more veteran players, more ex-players, and more current players listening. So definitely appreciate that. So way to shout that out, RJ. Moving ahead, like I said, we wanted to talk about we were talking about the rivalries and games being close and fans and people like me and you being able to get to games. And next week's going to be a good one as the New York Streets take on the Massachusetts Pirates, who you've been talking about, who have strengthened their roster.
Yeah, I think we may have gotten a couple of matchups incorrect because the league shuffled a couple of games around. The website has not quite been updated. I actually believe, and I'm going to double check this right now because I don't want to speak out my rear end.
Go ahead.
But I believe that the Cobras in the Streets are playing each other this upcoming week. So that's a real battle for supremacy right there.
Right, and that's the thing that kind of just, oh man, it just bothers me about these leagues, and that's the kind of thing that they have to get cleaned up, so to speak. The changes, the lack of updates to the website and things of this nature.
Yeah, and the league that does that the best right now is the Indoor Football League. The day after the game is over, I can look at the box scores, the stats, the whole 9 yards, right after it happens. And this is something I just think the National Arena League needs to address across the board. All right, I was going to look for the replay of the Streets game today.
Yeah.
And this is like the third week in a row where someone has had copyright claim because we have music in the background.
Yeah. And been seeing a lot of that too.
And I love my music at the game. Like, once the music, first of all, you have great music selection. You have DMX, Jay-Z, some great MCs. But the problem with that is, when
they want their money, that's the problem.
That's the problem with this, and again, it's a balance between finding great music and then people who aren't going to copyright claim it right off the bat because, first of all, it's kind of annoying to the fans, but, fans can live with it, I think, to a certain degree. It's really bad for the players and coaches who are trying to get their game film. That's the part that I think has to be hard because, you can attest to this more than I can because I haven't done front office work. What would it be like for you if you woke up the next morning going to look at your film and saying, oh, it's copyrighted?
Yeah, the one thing that I tried to do now, the whole music thing with the film is a whole separate thing. One thing I tried to do, if we utilized Huddle, people utilize other services, that's what we utilized. One thing that I always tried to do when I was engaging in conversation with players is let them know, that, hey, we have Huddle. You're going to definitely come here. You're going to be able to, have good film to take with you wherever you go, whether you're here for a short period of time or whether you finish the season with us or what have you. What it comes down to is then players, want to make something fancier. I don't really know how much the music really sets things off. Most of the coaches that I talk to who look at these videos, they could care less about the music in the player clips, this and that, So it's kind of a two-way street. You make a great highlight video with some great music and you want to, move that on. And at the end of the day, usually the coaches, and I know this, I've been in these rooms many a times, usually the coaches don't even have the volume up. So essentially you're making that video just for yourself.
Yeah, and if you want to make a YouTube video for yourself, a highlight reel, be my guest. When you listen to a Pittsburgh Steelers hype package in black and yellow, blaring by Wiz Khalifa in the background, it's great. But it's not made just for the players. And coaches. It's made for the fans. And if you want to make that for the fans, be my guest. We're forever grateful for that. But your film is more important than our hype videos. We can do that on our own time.
Yeah, and I think, that's exactly what it's for. It's for friends and family and fans. It's not for coaches. Coaches really don't get into all the extra. They want to see the film and see the tape and see if you can play football. As we move forward, this is the coach, and that's RJ, and we're kind of putting a wraps on the National Arena League. I did want to give the fans a couple tidbits of things coming up. You can join us next Monday, same channel, Arena Alternative Football News Network.net. You can join the coach and the kid in the indoor football experience. We've got some great guests coming up in the next couple of weeks. Daryl Stoneham, a wide receiver from Duke City Gladiators, will join us next week. And then the following week, Iowa Barnstormers lineman Oliver Lumpkin will join us. So we got some great guests coming up as we move the show into prime time. Again, the coach and the kid in the indoor football experience. So looking forward to lining up some guests, RJ, and having them talk some football. And the guys that we'll have on in the next couple of weeks are right in the middle of the playoff mix in their league, so it should be fun.
Definitely.
Like I said, we are going to transition to the talk a little bit about the CIF, and Duke City Gladiators are the defending champions, and we talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about the unfortunate defection of the Revolution, and looks like things are going to settle in where the Amarillo Venom are playing really good, Duke City's playing really good, and the Salina Liberty and Omaha Beef are playing well too, so should be interesting down the stretch. Who's going to come out on top?
Yeah, and there's something I do want to discuss about the CIF, and it's the replacement team coming in for a few of the Revolution games because, it's interesting to see some of these go with this motto, and I can see why some people are against it because the score of the Duke City Gladiators hosting the North Texas Savages, the replacement team for the Revolution for a few games. I wish there was a mercy rule because the game ended up 123-6.
Yeah, I've had the discussions off air, on air. You and I have talked about it. That's the thing that's really working out great for the IFL. It's working out great for the National Arena Leagues as these games are close and competitive. You really don't gain much by having a replacement team. At the end of the day, that black eye is still there in regards to your league, and it's just unfortunate. And the people that it hurts the most is it hurts the players. And I actually knew one of the coaches down there that was really getting his start coaching. He would have been ideal for indoor football as far as coaching, and he was really devastated by everything that happened with the defection. And again, is 123-6 a really entertaining game? Kudos to North Texas Savages for stepping up. Maybe the game, the North Texas Savages and the Oklahoma Flying Aces will be a little closer.
Yeah, honestly, the thing is, for these replacement teams, it's not about winning games. It's about getting exposure.
Yeah, hey, again, there's a lot of football in Texas, and it's nice to be able to step up, so to speak, and get an opponent in there. But again, it's still a black eye. It's like using replacement players. Yeah, you have a game, but the worst part of things have probably already taken place earlier in the week. So
it's like if you got a black eye and you put sunglasses on to hide it, but but you don't normally wear glasses. Like, your friends know something is up, they just can't put their finger on it.
Right, it's like you walking through the grocery store with sunglasses on, and there's no reason to. So, again, the leagues do what they got to do to keep things moving. So, kudos to the CIF for having a plan in place for the players, because when the players don't play, they don't get paid, and when home venues don't host home games, they don't have a chance to break even or make money.
Yep.
So another good game, and we talked about Salina a couple weeks ago, the Liberty, and they were able to defeat Sioux City Bandits, who were playing good, but Salina and the Liberty are really coming on strong as of late, and they put together a nice win, 57-54.
Yeah, that was a great game. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy CIF football. And this is one of the reasons why. And
Yeah.
the interesting thing about this game is that, Sioux City was more consistent in their scoring, but when Salina was scoring, they were scoring massive amounts of points. And I find that very interesting. Just, how the difference between sporadic, heavy scoring and consistent scoring, and how that evens up by the end of the game, because it was very close.
Yeah, and that loss was a big defeat for the Bandits, who fall to third place in that Northern Division. Omaha is leading that division with a 6-1 record. The Salina Liberty 5-3, playing really good. They're on a one-game winning streak now, back in the win column. Sioux City Bandits fall even to 500 at 4-4. Wichita, again, another disappointing team in this league. I felt that they were going to play better out of training camp, and they just haven't. They're at 2-7. Taking a look at the Southern Division, the Duke City Gladiators, who we mentioned, 5-3 on a 2-game winning streak. If you really want to count that as a big win against the Savages, but a win's a win, I guess. The Amarillo Venom checking in at 5-3. Again, the Texas Revolution, unfortunately, they fell out of the league, and then you have the Oklahoma Flying Aces at 1-6, and so hopefully they're able to put together. Hopefully they're able to get a win next week against the Savages, and they can put another win in the win column.
Yeah, and this is what you see with expansion teams a good bit. Some first year woes.
Yeah, definitely. So, the Oklahoma Flying Aces, they're in a different position than, say, some of the expansion teams in the IFL. Their travel is not the easiest, and again, if you kind of tier the league, so to speak, it's tougher to put together a new team in the CIF expansion team than it probably is in the IFL, and we're seeing that because there's a lot of talent out there, and that's why the IFL is able to have such a good league this year with so many new teams. We've talked, half the teams are new, half the teams are existing, so it'll be interesting. We'll be within a few weeks here of hearing a lot of rumors who's going to come and go in the CIF and in the IFL particularly, and we will have the National Arena League to take us deep into the summer.
Yeah, we do. And, I think that's an interesting thing about the NAL very quickly, just, because a lot of these leagues compete for viewers, so having a schedule that gives you a bit of time by yourself really does help.
Yeah, and also the one thing that I've noticed is having some fluidity in your schedule where there's not a lot of movement and changes, and that also helps as well. So kudos to the IFL. They get their schedule out in a timely manner. They stick to it. And, again, we've talked about so many times, the key to these teams, even if you're struggling a little bit, is starting the season, getting out of training camp, and finishing the season.
Definitely. And, Coach, what are training camps like in these leagues for those who are not aware?
It seems like a lot of the training camps are relatively similar, particularly in the IFL, the National Arena League, and the CIF, generally 2 to 3 weeks. Generally, you want 3 weeks. You want 3 weeks of camp, 2 weeks to to have training camp evaluate your players and then select your roster, no matter how many, whether it's a 30-man or 40-man roster, select your 21 players for. And then you would like that third week to prepare for a preseason game. Really what's happening lately with these teams is it's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks or less, no preseason game, and they get right into the league play. So ideally, to answer your question, I would like 3 weeks. I would like the first 2 weeks to be able to select my roster, evaluate my talent, formulate my depth chart. And then week 3, I would like to be able to prepare for a preseason opponent. Then after that, make any additional roster cuts or additions that I need to. Week 4, I'd be preparing for game 1.
Yeah, that's what you want.
And so a lot of these teams, you have to have a practice facility. What a lot of teams are learning in the warm weather states is, Florida, those guys, they just practice at high schools or colleges that's close by. That cuts down costs. It also gives them a community relationship with somebody in the community as well. Unfortunately, you can't practice indoor football outside in the Midwest. When you really want to get going in February, so it's just too cold. You have snow, rain, ice, weather conditions aren't ideal. So securing a practice facility sometimes can be one of your more challenging things to do as an organization and as a front office.
Definitely. And, when you talk about people practicing outside, some leagues have outdoor games. The most high-profile example is when Spokane Shock did that once in the AFL. But there are...
Did we lose you? Okay, sounds like we lost.
Yeah,
you there?
I'm still here.
What'd you do, fall out of your chair?
No, I think I don't know, my phone may have had malfunction real quick. I was just saying, some teams practice outside, but some teams actually play outside in different leagues. In the International Arena Football League, there are teams that play outdoors, which I find really cool because it's been done in big leagues before. The AFL had a game where the spoke.
Yeah, to pick up on what RJ was saying, talking about playing outdoors, I do remember a number of years ago, I can't remember which Virginia team, and I believe it was an IFL team. They hosted a game outside as well. I know that the teams in Arizona and California are currently practicing outside quite a bit, and again, it cuts down costs. It gives you an opportunity to establish a relationship in the community, which is good for your team and good for your fan base. Again, you're listening to the Indoor Football Experience. I'm the coach. Hopefully we'll have RJ the Kid joining us back here shortly, as we got just a little bit of time left to talk about some things going on in the indoor and arena football scene. You can listen to our show live on Mondays, 9:15 Eastern Standard Time. You can tune in to afnn.net. You can click on the player and join us live at the bottom of the page. Also, make sure you check out the website too, man. It's always changing. It's always got great content. Got a lot of good people adding content to it as well. So that's we got exciting things going on. The XFL will be starting up pretty soon. The good thing is, as far as we're concerned, there'll be a lot of CIF and a lot of IFL talk down the stretch here through the summer months as these leagues start to wrap up their last month or so of play and then get into the playoffs. We talked about a little earlier in the show how the National Arena League, they just start a little later, so they're really getting close to their halfway point. So we got plenty of indoor football, plenty of arena football to talk throughout the summer. I'm really looking forward to it. And the XFL will be cranking up now. I know a lot of players that are starting to get some XFL invites, including players in the indoor and in the arena leagues as well. So I'm the coach, and we lost RJ. RJ, are you there?
Yeah, I'm back.
All right. So we were just talking about how we're going to have plenty to talk about this summer, although the CIF and the IFL have about a month of play left, and then the playoffs and the National Arena Leagues getting right mid-season. I was just really talking about how I know a couple of players I've spoken to this past week have received invitations to XFL tryouts. So we'll still see some transition in these leagues down the stretch as players get invited to play in the XFL. So we'll see what type of impact that has on any of the teams, particularly if you're holding a top roster spot or a playoff spot.
Yeah, the one that I saw that was big that got invited was Fabian Guerrera. He played in the AAF. He's currently with the Columbus Destroyers of the AFL, but it said that he got an invite. So, congrats to Fabian Guerrera.
Yeah, so we'll see. Malachi Jones will be next. There's a number of guys in these leagues that we know will get that opportunity and to display their skill set on the 11-man scene. So it should be interesting summer. I'm really looking forward to it, having some alternative football to talk about, both of the arena and indoor variety. And again, with the XFL, that's going to impact the things that we talk about on a week-to-week basis. So should be real interesting. We got a couple minutes left, RJ, before we get out of here. Anything else on your hot plate before we let the folks know how they can keep up with us during the week?
Just a friendly reminder that if you got a team in the area that you live in, go out and support, whether buying merchandise, going to games, or if you don't have the money to spend like that, just supporting them online with positive comments and positive feedback. It makes all the difference in the world, because if you got a team, it's hard to get them, so you better do your best to keep them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Get out and support your teams, and most importantly, get out and support these players and coaches. If these fans and a lot of people in this industry, a lot of the fans of this industry, if they knew really some of the sacrifices that these players and coaches make to chase their dreams and really perfect their crafts, you really would have a lot of respect for these guys out here just trying to live the dream and make it happen. So like RJ said, make sure that you get out and support these teams so these leagues can exist and these players can have a stable platform to advance to the next level. RJ, how can the fans of the Indoor Football Experience and all the fans out there worldwide of the Alternative Football News Network, how can they keep up with you during the course of the week?
Well, you can go to my Facebook page, RJ Ciancio. Ciancio spelled C-I-A-N as in Nancy, C-I-O. You can follow my Instagram, which is RJ_Ciancio, or my Twitter page, at CiancioRJ. And Coach, where can we find you?
You can find me on Facebook at Linhart Jr. It's Linhart Jr. You can find me on Facebook there. You can also find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at TheCoach28, all lowercase. And you can also find me on Instagram at _Coach28.
Sounds great. I'll be keeping in touch with you.
Sounds really good. So, RJ, we're going to wrap a little early this week. We got a holiday weekend. We appreciate all of our listeners listening worldwide to us. Again, the coach and the kid on the Indoor Football Experience. So we're going to wrap a little early, RJ, and we will be back here next week with a great couple, at least one great guest that we know of from the Duke City Gladiators. We'll be back here same time next week. You can listen to the Indoor Football Experience on the Alternative Football Network. We'll be back next Monday, 9:15 Eastern time. For RJ the Kid, I'm the coach, and for our awesome producer Harry, we appreciate everybody listening in this week. Have a happy and safe Memorial Day, and we'll talk to you next week. Later.